Hi, Joe Bustillos here with tonight's final thought. I met with my neurologist recently to discuss my progress and what next steps to take with my treatment. Actually, a little bit later on in the week, I had met with my physical therapist, and it dawned on me that I had been on this particular journey for actually 2 years now, or actually a little bit over 2 years. And I find it almost impossible to recap what it's like to have my life stopped in its tracks, lose my mobility and my independence, and then come back. The question then became, or has become, come back to what? And so it's like one of these sorts of things, and I do apologize because I do seem to bring up this journey that I've been on for the last 2 years quite a bit in my writing and in these video blogs. But it's one of these sorts of things. Having gone through what I've gone through, I was very determined to try to remember the best of what it was that I experienced in terms of almost, it was never as, serious or life-threatening as it could have been, but it was, it was bad enough. It was very serious, and had I not gotten medical intervention, then, who knows what would have transpired. The difficult thing, I guess, now is, or part of the difficult thing now, is that I feel like I'm almost back to, like I say, almost back to normal, with the exception of I have some neuropathy in the bottom of my feet, and I have to, I obviously have to keep an eye on my health in terms of any kind of signs of weakening. I need to address and not do the typical male thing, which is to pretend to be, immortal and oblivious or unaffected by these sorts of things. So I remember at one stage kind of struggling with work and trying to just maintain, a strong, steady face, and talking to a coworker, and he told me, in not too long from now, he said, you'll forget all of this. And my first thought was I didn't really want to forget all of this, insofar as, it opened my eyes to, it opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I used to joke that I had a kind of, should I be lucky enough to live into my 80s, I have an idea of what it's like to be somewhat, the first word that comes to mind is frail, where I couldn't support my own weight. I had to use a walker for half a year, to get around. I lost, when things were very serious and just before treatment started, I stopped driving my car. I had a stick shift, so I couldn't work the pedals. And before that, I had resorted to, whenever I needed to move my leg position, I could push down kind of okay, but I couldn't lift up. And so I had to use my hands to literally move my left and right legs to put them on the pedals. And, as soon as I told Trisha that, then she's like, X-nay on the driving, no more of that stuff. But, typical guy, I'm trying to adjust, I'm trying to adapt. But I wasn't seeing the whole picture, I guess, in some ways. And so I want to remember the lessons learned in terms of being, when I was, when I really, was in a lot of pain, where sleep was my only refuge. I found myself being very intentional with everything I did because it was so difficult to just move about. And so I never, there was such a contrast of that experience with my previous life, because just, getting out of bed was so hard. And so if I were to, get out of bed and then go to another room, I needed to make sure that I had everything that I needed, because coming back, to the room was such a pain in the ass. And I remember, at the time when Trish and I were together, if I stirred, like I was going to get up and use the restroom, and she needed to use the restroom, she could get up and go, across the room and take care of business and come back before I had managed to even get fully upright. It was such a pain in the ass. And so I wanted to remember that intentionality with and not take for granted the mobility that, and I still, it's been at least a year since I moved back here to Winter Springs to my my townhouse, and I still find that I'm thinking before I come downstairs, do I have everything I want? Because going up and down the stairs is easier than it was when I, especially when I first moved back. But it's still one of these sorts of things that I need to have that intentionality that I want to maintain. And then on the other side of the coin, this episode of my life also corresponded with this national debate on healthcare, and this is horrible what the government is forcing us to do. And I, for one, for those who actually know me or had the pleasure of working with me, I'm a very stubborn person who really does not react well when being told what to do. If somebody tells me what to do, it tends to not really work well with me. And so to have an agency or some government or whatever tell me that I have to do something, like insurance, for me, in my personality, is not a good path to success. But and now, granted, I've always been fortunate from my earliest days of working with the phone company and then working with school districts. I've always had really, really good coverage, so that's never been an issue in my life. But I can see how big of an issue it can be, and how having it's an interesting thing. It's the whole industry of medical care is just it's not healthy. It's not functioning well, and so all these different parties of all the different stripes are trying to say, well, this is the way it should go. This is the way it should go. All I know is that number one, I was really fortunate that when I did seek medical help, everybody did what they were supposed to do, and I was treated with respect, and I was treated like a human. And I also felt that my part of the process was to come into speaking with these professionals, looking for their help, doing what I could do, and having a good attitude, even if I was in pain, because just having a bad attitude when I came into the working with these individuals, it wasn't going to help anything. It wasn't going to make me feel any better, and certainly wasn't going to make them feel any better, which in turn just reflects back on the kind of treatment. So that was, number one, was that I got really good care, and number two, I did have access to health care, and so even though it was very expensive, the treatments that I was getting, the option, had I not had care, then I was going down when things got serious for me with this. The CIDP is what the illness was. When things got serious and I was losing my mobility, I was falling. I couldn't support my own body weight. In a matter of 6 to 8 weeks, this whole thing transpired where I could not support my weight with my legs. Didn't know what it was. Went from physical therapy and neurosurgeon, couldn't find anything. They as far as something a structure to fall to my back or pinched nerve. They thought, nah. But when I really started going downhill, something completely different. The neurologist kind of jumped to the fore. I got the treatment, but it was a very long road back, and I couldn't imagine what would have transpired had I not gotten the intervention from the physical therapists and the neurologists and the nurses that I have gotten a chance to know and who have been have stayed with me. In fact, I've got my 22nd series of IVIGs is coming up, or should be coming up here in hopefully the near future. And an IVIG is basically an infusion of harvested human antibodies that counteract the damage that was being done to my leg muscles in this case with this infusion. And it's basically they stick a catheter in me and a big old bag of these fluids, and they do it for 4 days in a row. And I've done that 21 times, so 84 times, 84 days in the last 2 years I've been getting treatment. And had I not gotten treatment, this kind of illness can't. I would have lost use of my legs, which would have gone from treatable to not treatable, I imagine. And then had the illness gone to any other region of my body, in particular my abdomen or my diaphragm, then then I lose my ability to breathe, and there you go. It's kind of end of story. And so that was kind of important that I get the treatment, and I got the treatment. I had access to it. So it is one of these sorts of things. I'm not somebody who is comfortable being told what to do, but it is one of the sorts of things that is that you never know what's going to happen down the road, and if we live long enough, things do go. You can be perfectly healthy, and stuff happens, and it doesn't have to go in a bad direction necessarily with a proper treatment caught early enough, which is kind of sad because my sister and I, my older sister Kathy, had a similar. We were on parallel tracks when I started getting treatment. She was communicating with me her symptoms, and it seemed to be exactly the same sort of thing. And while I was getting better over the course of those first 3 to 6 months, she went in the other direction, and so I don't believe necessarily that the illness was what literally caused her eventual death, but being in that kind of pain that I was in, and I know she was in, I had those first 6 months or first year really of dealing with this pain and being on pain meds and that sort of stuff. She was on it twice as long as I was, and I just couldn't imagine what it would be like to have suffered that way. And so the good news is that after this next series of IVIGs, then I see my neurologist in another 3 months, and we figure out what the next steps are going to be. But I have to be, I have to keep my, I have to keep my head on, and I can't forget what I've learned, because if I do, then I might, it might be a situation where I'm revisited by this illness, and if I don't take care of it right away or do what I can do, then it can go back to what it was before. And so that's I guess that's the lesson learned is okay, I'm much healthier now. I'm in a better place, and that was through the support of Tricia and her family, and the medical professionals that I interacted with, my coworkers at work. There was when I wasn't driving, there was a while where I had Tricia would drive me to work, but somebody had to drive me back because there was no way I could last the full 8 to 10 hours that we tended to work in those days, and so somebody would drive me back, and I had a regular group of friends that really stepped up and did something that in many ways was very difficult for me, being independently minded. I needed to ask for help when I was not able to really. In many ways, I felt like I was kind of hanging in there, but I don't feel like I was. I certainly wasn't firing on all cylinders, and several of my coworkers stepped up and took up the slack in terms of making sure that my students were taken care of and those sorts of things. And those were important lessons where, as independent as I like to imagine myself, it's pointless to be quote unquote independent without this inner relationship that makes life a lot better. And so I guess that's kind of my final thoughts for tonight, is that I am much better. It's been 2 years of the physical therapy, about over around a year and a half of IVIGs. Like I said, this next series will be my 22nd series, which will be after that's done. I'll have 88 days where I've been lying on my back, thinking good thoughts. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful to learn from this episode of my life, and do what I can with the time that I have, and that's part of the reason why I do this yak blogging thing now, is because I feel it's important to leave some kind of record of the journey that I've been on, and hopefully to the betterment of those that listen, and to encourage others to seek the help that you need and to do what you can do. You know, it's a cooperative. It's, you know, it's what they do, the professional does, and then it's what I do as the individual in need of help. So that's my final thoughts for tonight, and I'm sorry it's a little bit long. Really, this is actually the third time or fourth time that I've tried to record this, and it's really difficult to find the words to share these sorts of things, because it is really complicated. But you know, I feel the need to share it, and so there we go. Anyway, so there you go. That's my final thought for tonight. Is you know, we say, you know, if you have your health, you got everything, and it's really trite, because until of course it happens where you're not able to do, you know, things like getting up out of a chair, or you know, walking across the room, or going out and getting in your car and being able to go anywhere and do what you want to do. You know, I went through a good solid year and a half of that journey, and so there you go. That's my rambling thoughts of the night, my final thoughts for tonight. So thanks for checking in, and we will catch you next time.